really need federal government assistance, not even city government. The city government, big that you have, and you have a major problem. The problem that you have is it's such a big dilemma. You really need federal government assistance, not even city government. The city governments have to be competent, capable, etc. But you really need the federal government to step in.
To do what, Donald? To do what? To do this?
We begin this morning with President Donald Trump ordering the removal of homeless encampments in the district.
Go another day of wasting any time. I've got a lot to say, can't hold it in this time. No filter, I got no filter. No filter, I got no.
There are many other countries and taking tremendous advantage of this, including NATO. If you look at the payments that we're making to NATO, they're totally disproportionate with everybody else's, and it's ridiculous. As far as other causes that are near and dear, this is the cause, because if we can solve this, then we're able to take care of something that I consider to be ultimately of ultimate importance, and that is the homeless situation. That is the...
What? Are you being serious with me right now? In 87? Are you being completely... Oh my God, you cannot be serious. This...
be ultimately of ultimate importance. Then we're able to take care of...
This is ultimately of ultimate importance. Solving the
something that I consider to be ultimately of ultimate importance, and that is the homeless situation. That is the farmers. That is the sick.
The homeless situation. Trump orders DC mayor to clear homeless encampments because this is ultimately of the ultimate importance. Solving the homeless situation because the homeless people are going through hell, and this is why we should clear them out, of course.
We don't have any money. This country is busted. And it's busted because we're doing things that we shouldn't be doing. If we had business ability in this country, we'd be making lots of profit, so-called surplus profit. And that profit, that money, could be going to defend and I literally mean defend our homeless and our poor and our sick and our farmers. And that's where we ought to be spending the money. Not
to defend our homeless. Oh, this is going to be such a great segment.
I do believe that the president, and I've said this before, especially as it relates to crime and homelessness, had a picture of the DC that he left during COVID, not the work that we have done in the interim to drive down crime and help get people housed. It's just not the same problem. And so we've made that case. And we've also made the case of how the federal government can do its part in both cases.
Didn't Trump say in his big speech in the interview in 1987 that it is the job of the federal government?
And we have already seen that partnership that the city has with the federal government, specifically the National Park Service, when they both work together to clean up or close the homeless encampments on federal property and federal parks, taking action on several dozen encampments in the last 2 years. And we can tell you, even in January, the city's Department of Health and Human Services has a website that talks about the different encampments. There were 12 scheduled for cleanup and closure in February and in...
We're protecting the homeless. Oh my goodness.
Giving it to countries that don't give a damn for us to start off with.
Give me a development forecast for the rest of the 80s, good or bad, for buildings.
I think it's going to be good in New York City. It's been bad in a lot of other places. It's going to get bad unless we do something about this horrible, horrendous deficit. You cannot continue to lose $200 billion a year. It's going to be so bad that people will never... I really believe this could be much worse, unfortunately, than recession. This could be the step beyond. I hate to use the word depression, but
step beyond.
But if we don't solve the $200 billion a year loss, which is exactly what we have, this country is going to have some very serious problem in the early 1990s.
One other thing, could the next presidency be a one-term presidency because of that?
I think the next president of the United States could have some very serious problems. It's going to be, I think, it's going to be a very difficult presidency because of the problems that we're talking about right now.
And you don't want it to be Donald Trump?
I do not want it to be Donald Trump, but I do want the problems to be solved, Larry.
Thanks, Donald. See you in New York.
Thank you, Larry.
Excellent. Let me see. Donald Trump homelessness policy 2025. Just so we see just how, like, let's see how he puts into practice his big words about protecting the homeless. Let me see. Trump is on track to ditch a time-tested approach. Accept. Trump is on track to ditch a time-tested approach to combating homelessness. The Project 2025 plan called to end housing first policy. Since returning to office, the Trump administration has moved to upend America's long-standing approach to tackling homelessness. Oh, wait, hold on. But in 1987, I could have sworn that Trump said that ultimately protecting the homeless was of ultimate importance, and that is his life goal, to fix America so that ultimately he could tackle the most important problem, the ultimate problem, the problem of protecting, not just helping, but protecting the homeless. What happened? It is like the housing first model, which has enjoyed bipartisan support for decades, prioritizes getting people into stable accommodations before addressing other issues like mental health or substance abuse. This evidence backed approach first gained prominence during George W. Bush's presidency, with Salt Lake City becoming an early success story in 2005. It was supported by the Trump administration during the president's first term and former Housing and Urban Development. Secretary Ben Carson publicly praised the model several times. But as homelessness has worsened due to the nation's housing affordability crisis, conservative think tanks and the GOP lawmakers have increasingly pointed to Housing First and the network of nonprofits and service providers that support it as the culprit of housing unaffordability. Project 2025, the Heritage Foundation's 900-page policy blueprint, explicitly calls to end housing first policies. So how does Trump attempt to protect the homeless, how he promised? How is he supposed to protect the homeless then? He said that ultimately that was of ultimate importance. Trump's appointment of Scott Turner, a pastor and former Texas state lawmaker, to lead the Department of Housing and Urban Development. He sounds qualified. A pastor and former Texas state lawmaker. Excellent. Signals a deeper shift. Federal policy is poised to turn away from the individuals and institutions that have backed housing first and toward a new approach that embraces mandatory treatment and even faith-based models. Faith-based models? What does that mean for the homeless? Are you gonna pray the homelessness away? During his time as a legislator, Turner voted against multiple bills to expand affordable housing and protect low-income tenants while blaming government welfare for harming American families. In his confirmation hearing, Turner emphasized an interest in leaning more heavily on local organizations, including religious groups, to solve the homelessness crisis. Yeah, this is how Trump is fulfilling his promises to help the homeless, I guess. Pray the homelessness away. That will work. Now, as secretary, he's created a Dodge-style task force aimed at slashing agency spending, including money directed at housing first organizations. Recent leaks suggest HUD is planning massive staffing cuts. Oh, so the Department of Housing and Urban Development has its own Dodge-like thing that just fires people left and right. Good to know. We're protecting the homeless. We are so protecting the homeless. It's incredible. It's gonna be great. Recent leaks suggest how this blah blah blah, particularly to the Office of Community Planning and Development, the division responsible for homelessness programs, affordable housing, and disaster relief. The New York Times reported in February that this office could see an 84% reduction from 936 employees to just 150. When Vox asked HUD to explain its homelessness strategy and position on housing first, spokesperson Cassie Lovett repeatedly declined to address homelessness, only confirming that the agency's disaster relief efforts will not be impacted because, it's clear that um, it's clear that this Department of Housing and Urban Development has a big, ambitious plan for homelessness because, as Donald Trump said in 1987, it is something ultimately of ultimate importance. So it is impossible for them not to have a brilliant plan to address it. Is it a rapid policy reversal? What's the best way to help? At the heart of the debate is a fundamental disagreement about what constitutes success in addressing homelessness. For Housing First advocates, stable housing is both the primary goal and the foundation for addressing other issues. Critics, however, argue that simply being housed without improvements in health or substance use doesn't represent real progress. This philosophical divide shapes how both sides interpret research on Housing First effectiveness. Critics like Judge Glock, an alumnus of the Cicero Institute who now directs research at the Manhattan Institute, points to studies from the National Academics of Science and The Lancet that found limited evidence of improved health outcomes among Housing First participants. Proponents like Margaret Kushel from the University of California, San Francisco's Beanie of Homelessness and Housing Initiative see the debate differently. Housing First is not and has never been housing only, she told Vox. Rather, it describes a strategy that best pairs housing with services in the most efficient way possible. She argues that the voluntary nature of Housing First makes it successful by helping preserve client dignity and autonomy, while increasing the odds that people actually embrace and stick with treatment. Right, because they have a feeling that they're starting to rebuild their lives, right? That's a pretty important factor. If somebody feels like there's nothing waiting for them, if somebody feels like there's just no chance of their life ever turning around, then what would the incentive be to stick to the programs? And having a stable home, a roof above your head, a place to call your own is a pretty big step to seeing the light at the end of the tunnel. Like if you're homeless, have a lot of mental problems, addiction problems, then I think things just might seem pretty hopeless. I feel like things genuinely may feel pretty hopeless when you're in that sort of situation. Veterans homelessness provides perhaps the clearest example of the model's potential. In 2008, a Housing First program began combining HUD provided housing vouchers for veterans with case management and clinical services provided by the VA. As a result, while overall homelessness has increased nationwide in the last decade, veteran homelessness has decreased by more than half. More than half. But most Housing First programs are not as well supported financially or politically. As the effort to end veteran homelessness, the problem with the Housing First policy is that Congress has not funded it to scale. Dennis Culhane from the University of Pennsylvania told Vox. Only about 15% of people who experience homelessness get into a Housing First program in a given year. And although regular check-ins by case managers remain a core component of Housing First programs, many programs do not live up to these standards. As critics note, this leaves some vulnerable individuals effectively abandoned, albeit indoors, with limited improvement in other outcomes. Well, that just means the program should be more robustly expanded, as far as I'm concerned. Trump's tight-lipped pivot on Housing First comes at a time when over 650,000 people in America experience homelessness on any given night, and roughly 40% of those individuals are sleeping outside on the streets in cars, parks, train stations, and other places not designed primarily for people. In Congress, it's unclear whether lawmakers even plan to adequately fund the federal housing voucher program, one of the key policy tools used to prevent ending up unsheltered in the U.S. Even if it's funded, though, Gutting the federal agency that administers the vouchers could lead to further problems in fighting homelessness. Because, as Donald Trump said in this very interview,
in the early 1990s.
One other
Is going to solve the 200 billion. I hate much worse, unfortunately. People will never not continue to lose $200 billion. I hate to, which is the early
of that.
problems. It's going to be, I think,
I don't want it to be
difficult. It's going to be a very difficult, very
presidency
in the early
the 80s, good or
$100 billion. I really believe this could be much worse, unfortunately, than recession. We'd be making lots of profit, so-called surplus profit, and that profit, that money, could be going to defend our, and I literally mean defend our homeless and our poor and our sick and our farmers, and that's
we need to defend our homeless. We need to defend our homeless by abandoning them to starve in the street. This is going to be a brilliant segment. I have to find some more Trump policy on homelessness. Trump wants to address homelessness by working with states to ban street camping. Donald Trump: the homeless have no right to turn every park and sidewalk into a place for them to squat and to do drugs. Again, listen to what he said in 1987, okay?
Perhaps.
No, that's not, this is not time for this, okay? Listen to what he said in 1987.
where our profit, business ability in this country, we'd be making lots of profit, so-called surplus profit, and that profit, that money, could be going to defend our, and I literally mean defend our homeless and our poor.
Yes, we could be making money. Because as he said before in this interview, and I'm going to look up all these clips and splash them together as a cold intro to this homeless segment. Ultimately, the problem of the homelessness and helping the homeless, according to Donald Trump from 1987, is a thing of ultimate importance. It is the problem to solve all problems. It is the thing, all that money that Trump wants to make is to help and protect the homeless, you see. That is the problem of ultimate importance. Now, fast forward to 2025, and I guess things have changed a bit. The homeless have no right to turn every park and sidewalk into a place for them to squat and do drugs. What a change in attitude. Violators of these bans will be arrested, but they will be given the option to accept treatment and services if they're willing to be rehabilitated, because being homeless is a crime and you have to go for rehabilitation. I'm a rehabilitated homeless person, okay? I used to be homeless, but now I became better because I'm a rehabilitated citizen. I hate the homelessness problem in our city. Brilliant. This is just brilliant. What else with Trump's homelessness policy? Trump's plan to eliminate homelessness is just cruel. Oh, whoops. Uh-oh. But I thought it was of ultimate importance. I thought he wanted to protect the homeless. What happened to that plan? What happened, Donald Trump? When is this from? How old is this article? When I am back in the White House, we will use every tool, lever, and authority to get homeless of our streets, Donald Trump said in spring 2023. In June 2024, the U.S. Supreme Court made this promise much easier to keep by overturning a lower court's decision on criminalizing homelessness. Grants Pass, Oregon, where the case originated, had been punished the unhoused with fines ranging from $295 to $1,250 and 30 days in jail. Wow. Ed Johnson was the initial lawyer who successfully argued this practice was unconstitutional. But after the Supreme Court weighed in, Grant Pass now was able to resume this practice. Other cities are likely to do the same because Trump wants to protect the homeless. Why are some cities opting to criminalize homelessness? These efforts are not aimed at solving homelessness, but at hiding it, and they're not even effective in doing that. They increase people's vulnerability and make it harder to get out of homelessness, People running for office think that rhetoric about getting tough resonates with voters, but it's unworkable. We need to live in communities where we take care of the people who are the victims of our failed politics.